Hey guys, so welcome back, and today is going to be my first episode in a series of artist or author spotlight. So I'm going to do an entire, I think, monthly series where every month I pick one author in the horror genre that I talk about, highlight some of my favorite books by them, what they've done, what they're working on, etc., etc. So I want to start off today with one of my favorite contemporary horror authors, Joe Hill. So Joe Hill is probably best known as Stephen King's son. He got pretty big, I would say, in the late 2000s, early 2010s with his books and comic book series. He has written, I believe, 4 full-length novels, a handful of short stories and short story collections, and comic books. So let's see. He has 4 novels, including Heart-Shaped Box, which came out as his debut release in 2007, and he also won the Bram Stoker Best Debut Fiction Novel Award for that. He has Horns, which came out in 2010, which was turned into a movie subsequently with Daniel Radcliffe. He has 2013's Nosferatu, which is a TV show, I believe on AMC. It's available on Shudder as well. And then the 2016 release, The Fireman. He also has 4 short story collections. The best known ones are 20th Century Ghosts, Strange Weather, and Full Throttle, and apparently he has one called a little silver book of sharp, shiny slivers. That's really hard to say. And then, of course, he writes a bunch of comic books. He's best known for Lock and Key, which was turned into a Netflix series, I believe, last year. And then he works in conjunction, I believe, with DC Comics. I think it's part of Vertigo, and has his own comic book publication company as well too. But I just want to talk about some of what I love by Joe Hill, why I think he's someone that everybody should read, and just share my favorite books with you guys. So we'll start off with the first book I ever read by Joe Hill, which was about 2 years ago, and that was his I guess New York Times bestseller, Nosferatu, spelled like the license plate number, obviously a tribute to the vampire of the same name, though spelled differently. This was recommended to me by a bunch of people as a really good starting off point for Joe Hill. It is one of his longer books. It's just under 700 pages long, and it is also a Christmas horror story, which is definitely a weird spin on a vampire tale. So Nosferatu tells the story of Vic McQueen. It kind of goes through her life. She has almost like a teleportation ability. She has the ability to go through a tunnel to find lost things. And this ability gets her in trouble with a vampire by the name of Charles Manx, who is your Nosferatu, who is the overlord of Christmasland. Don't want to spoil a lot of it by getting into the plot. This is a pretty hefty book, and there's a lot to unpack here. But it is definitely a very fun, whimsical, heavily stylized book, I would say. Heavily stylized, and he takes a lot of liberties with what vampires are, and his definitions of vampires, and his definitions of teleportation, and interdimensional travel, I would say. So not stylized in his writing style, but in that. This so far, I really did enjoy it when I read it. I believe it was a 4-star read for me. It does slog a little bit in the middle, and it has I don't want to say a rushed ending, because it's not a rushed ending, but definitely an ending that I was a little uncomfortable with. But I do like it. I do think it's his weakest book that I've read from him so far, but I would still recommend it if you are a fan of Joe Hill. I just don't think it's probably the best book to start off with. If you are looking for a different kind of Christmas horror read for the next year, this is definitely one I would recommend. It is extremely Christmassy. It is probably the scariest of the books that I've read. I don't necessarily think any of his books are particularly terrifying. They're more eerie and disturbing. Yeah. Anyway, it does have one of the more disturbing characters in this book. It is not the vampire. I'll let you guys read it and deduce for you who you guys think that is. I'll give you a hint. He wears a gas mask, and I find him quite appalling. So that is Nosferatu. Next up is Horns by Joe Hill. I love this book. This is the second book he ever released. Don't watch the Daniel Radcliffe movie beforehand because that movie is terrible in comparison to this book. This book is beautifully written. It is a murder mystery while at the same time being kind of a critique of religion and like morality, I would say. But this book is really, really fun. It's about a man who wakes up in the forest one day to find out that he has started growing devil horns and suddenly has the ability to get the people around him to tell him exactly what they think of him, which is unfortunate when he has been the prime suspect in the murder of his girlfriend for the last year. So that's pretty much the premise of Horns. Like a lot of Joe Hill's stuff, it starts off where you think you know where it's going and then does a full 180 and takes you on a really wild ride. This is definitely more of a solemn book. It's very one of those books that really pulls at your heartstrings, and it's just a very unique way to kind of depict. I don't necessarily want to say the devil, but like Satan's advocates or like the satanic panic in kind of a new light. I really, really like this. I love the crime drama in it. I do really like that it is a small town murder mystery on top of a supernatural horror story. Again, not the scariest thing in the world, but definitely very eclectic in its handling of demons and religion. I really like the way Joe Hill approached it, and I found it extremely fun. Okay, and then last but not least is by far my favorite book by Joe Hill. This was one of my favorite contemporary horror novels recently. Probably up there in like my top like 25 favorite horror novels ever, and that is Heart-Shaped Box. I've spoken about this before in my top 10 books of 2020. Even though this was released in 2007, I do think everybody who's interested in Joe Hill or wants to read Joe Hill should read this book. It tells the story of Judas Coyne. Again, he is a rock star who purchases a suit that is supposedly haunted off of a website like eBay, and turmoil ensues. It's so much more than that brief description makes it sound. It is really one of the most heartbreaking books I've ever read. It is pretty much an entire criticism on I guess how we handle mental health in America and how it has kind of become like a taboo, and I don't even know how to talk about it without really giving away what's going on. But this is a book with a lot of character and a lot of depth, and it uses a gimmicky cliche of a rock star and the gimmicky cliche of the goth chick and the gimmicky cliche of like the girl next door to really nail down some more pivotal opinions on the state of mental health and how a lot of people approach it versus ignore it, on all different spectrums in all different ways. And I do think that this is a really, really, really brilliant book. I will say, I know a lot of people criticize this book who DNF it by saying that it comes off very misogynistic. Keep reading. There is a reason why our main character comes off like such an asshole at the beginning. It is crucial to the story, and it doesn't stay like that. And I know a lot of people, again, have had issues with that, and that's a lot of times why people have told me that they couldn't keep reading it. Don't worry, that is there for a reason, and Joe Hill fully rectifies that. I do think that he is definitely more on the feminist side. You will see more of that in Horns as well as in Nosferatu, so not a lot of misogyny there, but it is intentionally put in here for a reason. It is part of a character arc. Don't worry. Hope that didn't ruin anything for you. Joe Hill, you can tell, is an animal lover. I will say, be wary. This book does contain animal death. It isn't any kind of like real animal cruelty in the way that like Nick Cutter writes, but it is there just for you to be aware. So it's definitely my top recommendation for Joe Hill. Also highly, highly, highly recommend people interested in Hill start with Horns. I think it's definitely a really good intro to his writing, and then I find this so far to be his magnum opus. And then if you want something fun later, of course there's Nosferatu. I haven't quite gotten around to Fireman yet, but I will say that I am most excited for what Joe Hill is working on right now. It is rumored to be called Up the Chimney Down, and it is about a character that is mentioned within his books, very similar to Stephen King. A lot of these books kind of have characters mentioned in little cameos throughout it. Pennywise does even make a little reference in Nosferatu, which I really like. So he's also quite aware of his father's work in that realm as well. But Up the Chimney Down is hopefully going to be coming out in 2021 or 2022. I think it had originally been planned for 2020, and then of course coronavirus happened, so it's kind of up in the air. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but hopefully that will be very, very soon. Anyway, so that is my little spiel on Joe Hill. I hope you guys enjoy these little artist spotlights. I have a bunch of them lined up. Hopefully I can fine tune them and make them a little more palatable and not so rambly as I go on. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.